Well, actually.
Mm.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Awakening Potential Podcast. It's your portal to profound self-discovery and personal growth. Join us on a riveting adventure as every week we unravel the extraordinary tales of ordinary individuals who create extraordinary lives. And in each episode, we plunge into their captivating stories, life-altering experiences, and profound insights which spark their journey toward realizing their limitless potential. And it seems to me that we have so many that are meant for more who are listening. So, more potential, perhaps we're not using it all to gain the skills and take the uncomfortable actions to get to things. But today's guest is Lisa Forrester, a true luminary in the world of everything she does, and I'm going to let her explain a little more. I know she's a myocranial release. Is that?
I'm a
Did
craniosacral therapist. Yeah.
I was close.
Close enough.
Why don't you give us a little background of what you're doing and what got you started in that? And
So my background is actually I've been a pediatric physical therapist for
that's
years. And while I am in the traditional hospital setting, I kind of came across somebody who was doing craniosacral work. And then when I looked over at them, and they were just calmly treating these kids, and they were getting like so many amazing results. And there I was, like running around the facility, sweating with these kids. And I was like, what is he doing? And then it kind of just transitioned me to learning about craniosacral work and adding that to my practice. So that's how I kind of got introduced to the cranial work.
good.
But it really was some a passion that I just fell in love with. It kind of changed me in general. It changed me because craniosacral therapy is so much about listening, and that the other person, the client, has really all the answers. And for me, as a pediatric physical therapist, we're just trained that you need to know all the answers. And that was always so scary. Like, what if I didn't know? Could I say I don't know the answer? And with cranial work, it's really about the client and listening. So all of a sudden, this like big freedom, honestly, came out of me just from that particular work, because I was able to follow the patient's journey, and they were able to get better, improve whatever skills they were trying to improve. And they had the answers. And I also got to empower them to say, it's all inside of you. So that was pretty a cool experience for me.
Absolutely. And I'm sure with that journey, you've must have had some challenges along the way. Anything that you faced to get to where you are today and how you overcame them?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
well, with the cranial work, there's a lot of trust, right? Because there's a lot that you can't see. It's that I'm come from a science background, right? So I like to see what's going on, understanding what's going on. And cranial work is about feeling, and feeling with your hands, but also just in your own body, in your own mind. So it really opened me up to this world that I couldn't see. And that was really hard for me. And the first moment I remember, I took my first class of like how to even learn craniosacral work. And I was on my partner, who I didn't know. It's just legs. And they're like, you're going to feel this craniosacral rhythm. And I'm like, okay, let's feel this. I'm here. I'm open minded. And I put my hands on her legs and I closed my eyes, and I was getting so frustrated because all I could feel is this movement everywhere. And it was like all over the place. And finally I was just like, dude, stop moving. Not so nice, honestly. And she was like, open your eyes. I'm not moving. And I was like, whoa, okay, there's something more that I can't see. And so that was the beginning of the trust, right? But then I would like start working on clients, and I would have this like question that would come up into my mind that I knew I had to ask them, but I was afraid to because it was weird. It just felt weird. And I was like, okay, it keeps coming up. I'm just going to ask it. I don't know if I'm making it up, or they tell, like, how is this coming into my head? I don't know. And so I would ask, and they're like, well, it's funny you said that because actually, and they would always validate the things I was hearing, feeling, seeing, whatever it was. And that like I started to trust obviously myself more
Right.
because it was being validated by the patient. The patient was getting better. The stories that I was just unraveling were making sense to them. And that just process has continued. And so that trust was a huge foundation in just everything going forward in myself.
Beautiful, beautiful. So when you had those challenges, how do you overcome them
Of
to
just
get to that point, to get to that
yeah,
point of like
of
trusting
just
you, right?
trusting. Oh my goodness.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's hard. It's hard because, I think I am at least wired, and I think a lot of us are wired to doubt ourselves,
Exactly.
right? Like,
That's
right, these little voices and stories that we tell ourselves in our head over and over again.
yeah.
And so to get over that, I just really like went back to the basics of the cranial principle, which is that each of us really knows how to heal ourselves, but sometimes we just need that help. So the basis behind craniosacral work is that, you have a cut, say, right? You have a cut and we don't do anything. It just heals. Like the body knows how to do that. But
Right.
sometimes the cut's too big. So you need like stitches to hold it together. And then the body then knows how to heal. So the craniosacral therapists are those stitches, basically.
Mhm.
And I think going back to that just concept is like, I know that inside of me, there's this intuitive sense, if you will, um, that knows what I need, knows what to do, knows how to heal, knows a lot of things that we don't tend to listen to. And I like to
Right.
call it my probably subconscious self, right? But my
Absolutely.
conscious mind just comes in and bombards it. So to overcome it, going back to the question, I would say I had to like quiet that conscious mind. And whether that was through meditation or
Mm.
through just being quiet and journaling, really dig deep into that subconscious place to say, what is it? Why am I not trusting myself? What is it that happened back in the day that maybe, is the core reason I'm not trusting myself?
Right.
And really kind of peel back those layers and say, okay, what am I seeing with my clients? What am I seeing when I'm treating? And what I was seeing is results, better results than ever. And
Right.
when I realized that I can learn to step out of my way, literally, like without intention, like you come in with a headache and I want to treat that so bad. I want your headaches to go away so bad. But when I removed my conscious mind from wanting too much of that and just listening to the patient and myself, my subconscious self, that's
Mhm.
when the magic happened. That's when the headaches disappeared. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's a journey. I mean, it's not overnight. And yes, those thoughts are going to come into your head all the time, but um but I think it's such a valuable piece to be able to trust yourself. I mean, if you can't trust yourself, who can you trust, really?
Exactly, exactly. And this is part of what I teach in my practice with my clients. And it's such a progression. And I'm glad you said it's a journey because it doesn't blah, blah, blah. It doesn't happen overnight. And it's one step in front of the other, right? Truly one step in front of the other. And I'm so grateful you put that piece in because a lot of people don't know how or they don't realize it's possible. So
Mhm.
thank you for definitely doing that. What would you say is one of your greatest life lessons?
Is I would say putting myself out there and showing up as me, and that's fine. That's enough. Like, I don't have to know all the answers.
Yeah,
I don't even have to know how to do it.
yeah,
Like just coming and showing up as myself, I think is a huge life lesson.
exactly.
And I know I also have a podcast, right? It's called The
I was
Real
just
Life
going to
Mom.
say next. Okay.
Yes, yes, it's called the Real Life Mom Podcast, and I think this was the thing that actually pushed me forward in that. So the craniosacral work, I learned how to trust myself, right?
Mhm.
But the podcast allowed me to show up as myself.
Love it.
And The Real Life Moms podcast, just to give a little blip of what it is, it started as something totally different. I really wanted to help moms, right, connect because I was in the pandemic. I was a pediatric physical therapist working in a hospital setting and seeing these moms with newborns coming in and not having any exposure to other moms. And it broke my heart to like I was the only mom they were seeing. And they weren't even seeing me because I was garbed up in all sorts of like gowns and gloves and goggles and things. And nobody saw my face or body for that matter. But
Right.
yet I was the only person they were connecting with as a mom, and that made me sad. So I decided to start a podcast. I'd never listened to a podcast, but I was going to start one. Okay. Like, yes. And I didn't know any of the things, but I had the trust that I learned from my craniosacral work. And I was just going to take, like you said, one step at a time. What
Yeah.
I learned from the podcast is that I wasn't helping those people as much, those moms, but I was really helping myself with each conversation that a
Absolutely.
mom was coming on to talk on my show. I was like, wow, I need to do this. I need to learn this. I need to practice this. And I got so many amazing tools that it kept propelling me forward. And now the podcast has changed quite a bit. Now I really want to help moms themselves. And I want them to be able to take a break from their daily chaos and parenting and really focus on themselves and give themselves time to really
Yeah.
fill their bucket so that they can take care of others. So I'm
Absolutely.
not sure I haven't answered your question, but
No, you have it. And I must add that it's a brilliant podcast for those of you who haven't heard of it or seen it. Definitely. It's going to be in the show notes when this airs, and all the contact information and everything else will be there as well. Um, uh, you've had quite the journey, to say the least, as many of us have. What brings you joy and fulfillment?
Oh, okay, there's a few things. I love learning things that are new, which is one
Uh-huh.
of the things the podcast brings to me. And then I love inspiring others
Yeah.
and taking them on that journey to take action, you know? So we learn something new, and how many of us go, "Oh, okay, great. Like that was really cool." But like for me, actually taking the next step just to try it is like lights me up. I love that so much. And that is one thing I do bring on the podcast. We always have an actionable step to do that next step, to move forward. So that is something that really, I don't know, it just makes me feel so good. And what I notice is when I feel good, and when I'm taking these steps and learning something new, I'm dragging everybody along. Like my kids are being dragged along, my husband, the
Yeah,
listeners, everybody is coming along with me. But
absolutely.
it's really cool is that I'll listen to my daughter talk to her friend. And you know what kind of advice she's giving is the thing we just tried, the thing that we just implemented. And it's so cool that like how many people we're touching by just doing one thing.
I love that. I love that. And what I'm hearing in that, and what I know from my own experiences, and what we do as servant leaders, is often we model it for others. We learn it, we model it. We're only a step ahead of you, you know, a lot more often than not. But when we're standing around people who are modeling it, or in the presence of people like yourself who are modeling it, it raises us all. It raises the
Mhm.
level of our beingness to really stretch. And that's pretty much what the show is all about. And we have lessons to learn. You have lessons to learn. We all have experiences. It's what we're going to do with those experiences that are going to make the biggest difference in
Mhm.
not just our lives, but the lives around us. And having a moment, I don't know about you, you have kids. I had a moment where this weekend my daughter was like, "I'm so proud of you, Mom." And it was like, to hear it from your adult children now, but it's I'm not doing it for that, but it was just a moment of like, wow, and it felt good. So I know I'm on the right track. I'm following my heart, as I really sense you are as well.
Mhm.
Um, and I love heart-based people, you know, because that's what really, yeah, like attracts like, right?
Mhm.
What are some of those lessons that for the listeners that might support them moving forward? that you've learned, like something, some golden nugget that makes it tangible for anybody who's listening to realize that they can be extraordinary living an ordinary life. It doesn't have to look a certain way.
Yeah. I think just taking that one step, right? So we have our comfort zones that we all love to stay in. And I think if you can like even dip your toe out of it, if you have a craving, a pull for something, like dip your toe and then build from there. Then take a step, then take another step, and really keep going towards that goal that you want, even if you don't know all the answers. You don't need to know all the answers. You can totally learn along the way. I mean, I've totally done this. Here's a little story, okay? Just about
Please,
staying in
yeah,
your comfort
yeah, yeah,
zone, if you
yeah,
don't
yeah,
mind.
yeah. No, please.
So I was working, 15 years at this hospital, right? That was during the pandemic. And during that time, I was, kind of getting pulled to this private practice world. And so I just kind of dipped my toe in and said, I'm going to take a few patients, maybe it's just one day, right? And then, it started to build over time. Then I would be 2 days. And so then I was working 2 days at my private practice, 3 days at the hospital. But the hospital was stable. It had health care, it had benefits, it had all the things that we are taught to stay safe, right, in the world. And my private practice did not have consistency. It did not have any days off. It didn't have any of that. Well, what happens after 15 years? They closed our department and let us go. And who's going to think, right? Like you always think, oh, it's riskier to go out on your own. But honestly, the risk was the hospital. And now I'm out on my own because I had no choice. But because I took the dip, the toe, that little step forward just to try it, I had something to go to. I wasn't like stuck. I'm 50 years old. The last thing I want to do is start over at a hospital or a job. Now I'm my own boss. I make my own hours. I practice the way that really aligns with me. And I wouldn't have ever done that if I stayed in my comfort zone. And I would have been out of a job.
Right, right. I love that. I love that. And thank you for sharing that. Um, I love your transparency and your vulnerability and just being you. And I think that's the greatest lesson that most people could really walk away with as well is just be you. Whether you have makeup, no makeup, dressed up, dressed out, Grace hanging out, whatever it is, it's like just be you because people are going to hear your heart. You have a story to tell, you have a lesson to give, you have gifts, right? We all have gifts, and you're definitely bringing forth your gifts into the world. What would you say is your greatest gift?
I feel like I'm your cheerleader. I think my gift is like, I mean, in everything I do, I'm cheering people on. I'm inspiring others, whether that's like being a parent. I do that for my family. I do that for my clients. I do that in my podcast. I feel
Exactly.
like I was a cheerleader in high school. Not that that's so cool, I'll be honest, but I was. And looking back, I had to do the work to look back and say, what is my passion? It really took me time to figure that out. Like, what is my passion? What do I like to do? But my just innate ability is to cheer people on. And I want to, like, if there's something great out there, I want to take you with me. And if you want to do something, I'm the one that's going, oh my God, you should totally do that, So I think that is my gift.
I
And I
love
think
that.
everybody needs a cheerleader. Find a friend that is your cheerleader. Find a
Yes.
family member. Get somebody. I think you said it on my podcast. I'm the wind beneath my clients' wings, right? Who's the
Yep,
wind beneath
absolutely.
your wings?
Exactly.
And I think that's so important
Yeah,
because we all need someone there that's going to be cheering us on. So whether you get that from a podcast or you get that from a friend, I think that's an important thing especially when you're dipping your toe out of your comfort zone.
absolutely, Lisa. This is awesome. And it's so interesting that you say that about being a cheerleader in the past. From my experiences, I'll always ask my clients, like, what did you do when you were a child that you really enjoyed a lot? And if you're doing something that related to it, you're cheerleading, right? Is you're living you're aligned with your passion. It's always
Mhm.
that correlation, and most people don't realize it. But when you look back, there's something that really sparked that interest when you were young that is taking you forward in something to align with. So maybe just that little golden nugget might inspire you to start thinking about what you did as a child, looking back, and be your own cheerleader and jump out. It's an opportunity to look. Before we close today, Lisa, and I thank you for your time, your talent, and as I said earlier, your contact information will be in the show notes that go out. Everything comes out every Tuesday, so it's staggered out there on Tuesdays, but definitely come back. We'll be marketing for you as well. But is there something you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I just want to, like, I guess, reiterate, like, show up as you, right? There is only one you. And even though if 100 people are doing what you want to do, what you want to sell, what you want to be, that's okay. That just means it's a good idea.
Mm.
And you're going to make it different because it's you. And don't be afraid of that because that is so valuable. People, here's the golden nugget. People need you, whoever you are.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much again for coming here. And with that, the lesson here, you have a choice. Don't be ordinary. Reach for extraordinary and make it a fabulous day.